The mountain road curled like a lazy snake, and I followed it, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. It had been months since I'd been up here, months of sleepless nights, conference calls I couldn't remember, and a silence so loud it followed me like a second skin. I told myself I came back for peace. For quiet. But I think I was hoping the mountain might still remember me, even if no one else did. Pines lined both sides of the road, thick and stubborn, their scent. I woke up to frost webbing across the windshield, the thin light of dawn slicing through the cracks like cold truths. My neck ached from the awkward angle I'd slept in, still behind the wheel of my car. The old guest house loomed a few yards away, its silhouette painfully familiar, like the worn edges of a childhood memory. I'd spent summers there with my father, helping him chop wood, roasting marshmallows on the porch. Now, the air was dry, the silence brittle. The kind of stillness that doesn't comfort, but judges. Birds chirped in the trees. They didn't care that the woman who used to feed them sunflower seeds had become a ghost outside her own life. I sat in the front seat a few minutes longer, trying to piece together what had happened, what I'd seen. The lodge wasn't just changed, it was repurposed. And I didn't have a place inside anymore. Eventually, I stepped out, boots crunching into the frosted gravel, and made my way toward the side window of the kitchen. The glass was clean, newer than I remembered, and I crouched beneath the sill like an intruder. Through it, I could see the new rhythm of the house playing out, as if I had never existed. Inside, Verina's family moved around with the ease of routine. Her sister poured coffee like she owned the mug. Her parents were seated at the dining table, passing around toast and jam, chatting casually about traffic in Denver and someone's upcoming retirement party. A teenage boy, probably her nephew, was scrolling on a phone near the fireplace. They were comfortable. Too comfortable. A dish towel hung from the oven handle embroidered with Verina's kitchen in loopy script. A series of photos lined the hallway now, shots of beach vacations, ski trips, smiling faces I'd never met in a home I once scrubbed clean every Sunday. One of them laughed and said, "Is the other one still lurking around?" And they all chuckled like it was an inside joke. I didn't flinch. I just stepped back, slowly. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream, it just sits there. Heavy. I breathed through it. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just observed. Planning, not reacting. That was always my edge. Then I heard him. "Mom, can you help me?" The word sliced through the morning haze like glass. I turned toward the deck. My son, Ezra, stood there, waving his hand with a crooked smile. But the woman he was calling to wasn't me. Verina appeared from inside with a bowl of strawberries, walked over, and ruffled his hair like she had any right. Ezra took the bowl and thanked her. Called her mom again. I stepped forward, and for a moment, he didn't see me. Then our eyes met. His smile faltered. "Oh, hi." That was all. Not "Mom." Not "I've missed you." Just "hi." The world didn't tilt. It didn't need to. It just quietly betrayed me. I had held him through colic, through broken arms and piano recitals. I watched him sleep on nights he was too scared to close his eyes. And now, he looked at me like I was a childhood neighbor he vaguely remembered. I pulled him aside, steadying my voice even though every fiber wanted to shake him. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. A while. Dad said you didn't want to be around anymore." I didn't know what to think. I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek until I tasted metal. Verina appeared behind him. "Let's not do this now," she said, her tone as smooth as silk that cut. I didn't reply. I just looked at her, then at Ezra. That was enough. Sometimes silence does more damage than shouting ever, still gripping the photo of Ezra like it might keep me from falling apart. Her home smelled like cinnamon and old books, and something else, trust. The kind of scent that feels like a memory. She gestured toward a chair beside a patchwork quilt and poured 2 cups of tea without asking. I sat, grateful to be anywhere that didn't erase me. I used to see you, she said, stirring slowly. In that red sun hat. You'd be down in the garden all morning, humming to yourself. I told my late husband once, that girl looks like she belongs to this mountain. I smiled weakly. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like I had to defend my presence. She sat across from me, her fingers wrapping around the cup like she was bracing herself. I suppose you didn't come here just for small talk, she added softly. No, I replied. But I appreciate the warmth. There was a pause long enough for the tea to cool. She finally said, I made a mistake. And it's been weighing on me since spring. I sat forward. She took a slow breath, like unsealing something buried. Gideon came to me in March. Said he and Verena were restructuring some property. Transferring ownership into a trust under her name, for tax reasons, he said. I didn't speak. I notarized the transfer. Didn't think much of it. I assumed you were part of the plan. I always believed you'd still be on the paperwork somewhere. You never thought to call? My voice was calm, too calm. She looked ashamed. I should have. But their lawyer, he said it was all above board. And Gideon, well, he sounded convincing. I knew that tone. I'd fallen for it myself more times than I could count. She stood, opened a drawer, and returned with a thin manila folder. Inside was a printed copy of the deed. My name was nowhere. But my signature was. Only it wasn't mine. It was done electronically, she whispered. But that's not your e-signature, is it? I shook my head. No tears. Just cold realization. He hadn't just cut me out. He'd weaponized my trust. They forged it, I said, more to myself than to her. Mrs. Lyle nodded. I'm sorry, Sloane. I really am. That's when something shifted in me. I wasn't just angry. I was alert. Did he use the property for anything else? I asked. She hesitated. There was chatter around town. Something about a line of credit tied to the property. Verena's family business. A bakery supply distributor, I think. I pulled out my phone. Dug through months of emails. Maintenance invoices. Transfers. Renovation budgets. Slowly, it came together. The paint, the new roof, the appliances Verena bragged about yesterday all matched withdrawal amounts I'd signed off on months ago. They'd funneled it all through me. I handed her my phone. They used my home as capital for their empire. Mrs. Lyle didn't argue. They built their future with the bricks of my past, I muttered. I stopped mid-thought. The rage was there, but so was something new. Precision. No more tears. Not today. I stood, clutching the folder. Thank you, I said. She reached out, touched my hand. You're not alone. Not up here. Outside, the wind had picked up. I pulled the embroidered handkerchief from my coat pocket and wiped my cheek. The thread along the bird's wing was coming loose. But it was still there. Like me. Even the mountains, I thought, remember what was built on truth. I made it halfway to my car before my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text read, "We need to talk. I know what they did to you." I stared at it for a moment, heart thudding. Then I recognized the number. Lysander Keene. He'd represented both Gideon and me in the early days of the business. Before the lies. I didn't know whether to thank him or fear him. But I texted back. When and where? The moment I stepped into the great room, the shift hit me like a slap I didn't see coming. New lights, polished oak floors, and the smell of lavender and varnish replaced what used to be pine, dust, and slow-burning firewood. But it wasn't just the air that had changed, it was the walls. Lined with photographs. Gideon in a flannel I'd bought him 5 Christmases ago, Verena on his arm. Their kids, her sister's kids, I reminded myself, arranged like a Norman Rockwell painting. Smiling. Serene. Belonging. I walked past them like a shadow, unseen by anyone who mattered. Like a cautionary tale mounted on a forgotten nail. Celestine made her entrance like she owned the altitude. "Welcome, everyone," she said with that voice she saves for events and enemies. "We're here to celebrate Verena's return, and all the healing this home represents." Healing. That was a word I used to believe in. I looked at the guests, neighbors, business partners, cousins I hadn't seen since my wedding. They smiled politely, none knowing I'd ever been anything but the woman now standing by the punch bowl. They'll build the story they want, I thought. And expect me to stay silent. As if summoned by that thought, Celestine raised her glass. To new chapters, she declared, eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. And to moving past troubled histories. I didn't flinch, but I felt every eye flicker my way. The polite silence after her toast said more than any insult could. A woman across the room whispered, "Is that her?" and the man next to her shrugged. I wasn't angry yet. Not exactly. I was something slower, heavier. Unknowing. Like a body learning to carry a limp. That's when the photographer arrived, all cheery energy and bouncing camera gear. "Let's get everyone together," Verena called out. "Gideon, kids, mom, dad, you too." I was handed a drink. "We'll get you in the next one," someone muttered, already turning away. I stood there, clutching the glass. My hand, stiff and pale, held it like an apology. From my coat pocket, a corner of the embroidered handkerchief peeked out. That bird, still flying, even as its thread frayed. Flash. Click. Laughter. Each photo felt like an erasure. Every shutter click stole something that used to be mine. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I walked outside. The air bit sharper than before. I stood facing the trees I'd helped plant. The beams I picked, the tiles I argued over. Every part of this home had passed through my hands first. I whispered aloud, this life was lived by my hands. This house was built with my vision. Then I pulled out my phone and began typing a list, not for them, but for me. Every design decision. Every invoice I signed. Every memory they couldn't scrub out with fresh paint. "You cannot go back and change the beginning," I said under my breath, remembering the quote, "but you can start where you are and change the ending." And I was ready to change mine. I opened a new text. To Gideon. Message, "Let's talk tomorrow morning." No venom. Just clarity. I walked back into the house like I had every right to be there. The photographer was packing up. Verena met me halfway, her smile pulled tight as a drawstring. We'll see you after dinner, Sloane, she said. Can you bring your paperwork? She delivered it like a dinner invitation. But I heard it for what it was, a challenge. I let the silence settle before answering. Gideon's message came at sunset. Let's talk things out like adults. That was the phrase he used, calculated, bloodless. The kind of line you'd expect from someone managing a client, not addressing a wife he spent 17 years with. I didn't hesitate. I told him to meet me in the study, once mine, now a shrine to Verina's lavender empire. I hadn't been inside since she replaced my files with boxes of branded teas and affirmations printed on pastel mugs. The wood-paneled walls still held the scent of old ambition and dust, but they felt colder now, like the space had been scraped clean of memory. I walked in with my phone in hand. Not to argue. Just to remember everything he would try to twist. My notes were simple. Dates. Transactions. A list of things that once mattered. He was already there, seated, hands folded like a pastor about to deliver bad news gently. Thanks for coming, he said, his voice low and measured. You asked, I replied. He nodded like he was preparing a script. You've been overwhelmed lately. I think some things got misinterpreted. My spine stayed straight. Such as? This isn't about blame. We're just trying to figure things out. Verina's parents being here, it's temporary. We're reassessing everything, the property, our roles. He paused. Even Ezra's worried about you. There it was. Not just gaslight with a smile. The implication that I'd unraveled. And for a moment, I could almost believe he thought he was being kind. You're remembering things wrong, he added, gentler now, like he was comforting a child. You've had so much on your plate. I studied his posture, his tone, every gesture calculated. This wasn't concern. It was performance. When a man weaponizes empathy, I thought, it cuts sharper than cruelty. He went on, building a narrative where I was confused, unstable, unable to cope. Where he was the benevolent guide helping me face reality. I let him speak. I needed the lies laid out. One by one. When he finished, I opened my phone. Swiped through my notes. Pulled up images of documents he hadn't expected me to see, property transfers, notarized forms, timestamps. This is the part where you tell me it was for our protection, I said. He blinked. I leaned forward just slightly. You erased me from the deed, Gideon. But I still hold the truth. He didn't speak. He just looked down at his hands. That was all I needed. As I stood, I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, where Verina was waiting. She stood with her arms folded, a tight smile on her face. You're done? She asked. Apparently. She didn't move. If you're still here Monday, we'll file a restraining order. I laughed once, bitter and short. On what grounds? For the children's safety, she replied, as though she was citing a wellness pamphlet. You've been showing signs of instability. My body went still. Not from fear. But because in that moment, I saw it clearly, this wasn't just a theft of property. This was a full-scale character assassination, masked in smiles and soft voices. She tilted her head. You always did struggle with boundaries, didn't you? Then she stepped aside, letting me pass like a queen dismissing a servant. I walked out of the house without looking back. The temperature had dropped, and the last light was fading as I crossed the courtyard. Back at the guest house, I didn't even take off my coat. I sank onto the porch chair, letting the cold sink in. My mother's voice came to me, calm, always just under the surface. Sometimes the only way to protect what's yours is to let them think they've won, until they haven't. I opened my phone again. Drafted a message to my attorney. Short. Direct. A checklist of legal pressure points. I knew what I had to do now. Then I opened my journal, found the word I'd written the day before, hurt. I tapped, deleted it. Replaced it with awake. The difference was everything. My phone buzzed again. A message from my lawyer, found something on the property registration. You'll want to see this in person. I stared at the screen. My hands trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was something sharper. Heavier. Like finally grabbing hold of the thread you've been pulling for months, and realizing it leads somewhere real. I entered the dining room and froze for a beat. The place was set up for a celebration, Verena's brand launch maybe, chairs stacked with white covers, banners tucked in corners, the air scented with chamomile. It used to be our family table, now it looked like a showroom. They didn't seat me at the head. They placed me off to the side, by the window where the light was weak. Ramona handed me an invitation card, dress code, summer white. I slipped the card into my pocket, felt its edge like a bruise. I'd built these walls, ordered the rugs, picked the wood. Now I wore the outfit of a guest in my own home. I looked across at Gideon and Verena, their laughter drifting. I settled into a chair, sat straight, drank slowly. I'll stay composed. I will not shrink. The video started. Montage of vacations, me with Ezra on the deck, me planting furs on the slope, me dancing at the wedding reception. I paused my drink. The footage flipped, Verena stepping beside Gideon, her children in front, applause. I was shown, but only in older clips. No recent one. No toast I'd prepared. The MC said, "Let's hear from Verena now." Ramona winked at her sister. The crowd clapped as Verena stood. I sat silent. My heart pounded. I could almost hear my voice being edited out. They were rewriting the past, making me then and Verena now. My throat tightened. In that moment, humiliation morphed into something colder, resolve. I thought, I will reclaim the script. I will speak. I will show the truth. Later I drove into town. Rain tapped the windshield, headlights stretched into the dark. At a motel business center I pulled up the scanned registry. There it was, the lodge listed under Verena's corporate name. My documents, dated earlier, showed my signature. But the newer title, hers. I sat in the silent lobby, the newsprint of the registry shining on the screen. Justice delayed is still justice. I tapped the screen, heart heavy but steady. They'd used my name, my home, my trust. I let the realization settle. Then planning replaced shock. I headed back up the mountain, mind focused, breathing in the night air colder than my anticipation. Back at the lodge I retrieved the handkerchief from my coat pocket, embroidered birdwing fraying at the tip. I cleaned my fingers, placed it inside the journal on my lap. I toyed with the old key I'd kept in my coat. I dialed Lysander, gather everything. I'm making a move tonight. No shouting. Just clarity. The moon peeked through clouds, quiet but present. I thought of them inside celebrating, unaware I was already done being passive. I stood, jacket zipped, journal in bag, key in hand. The night was mine for a moment. I sat in the car on the driveway. Engine off. Headlights untouched. I waited. The lodge window lights flickered. A shadow moved near the corner. I pressed the horn once, short, firm. They froze. My pulse slowed. This wasn't goodbye. It was the strike I'd been preparing. I looked at the house I built, the name that used to be mine, and realized I was shifting from outsider to strategist. Cold, composed, ready. The morning came quiet, almost too still. I woke before the others, drawn outside by the pale light slipping over the mountains. The air bit at my cheeks, sharp and expectant, like the world was holding its breath. I wrapped my hands around a mug of coffee and sat on the patio. From there, I could see the lodge, the one I'd helped build, board by board, dream by dream. Now it felt hollow, occupied by strangers wearing my family's faces. My mind wandered through decades of labor, love, and loyalty, all rebranded under someone else's name. My name had become a footnote. I heard my late friend Catherine's voice in memory, "Let patience be your teacher, not your jailer." I'd spent years mistaking endurance for wisdom. That morning, patience felt like a locked room, and I was finally reaching for the key. Something was about to shift. I could feel it. When I came back inside, the dining room smelled of bacon and burnt toast. Gideon sat at the head of the table, reading his phone like he was chairing a meeting. Verena stood by the counter, her tone bright, rehearsed, fake. I poured myself coffee and sat across from them. He didn't look up when he spoke. "This ends today," he said. "You're out of here." Just like that. No warning, no warmth. The words landed like a gavel. Verena's lips twitched, almost forming a smile before she masked it with a sip of juice. Ramona scrolled her phone, pretending not to listen, though her posture gave her away. I stared at Gideon for a long moment. On what grounds? My voice was calm, even. He looked at me like a man explaining a business decision. "You've become disruptive. This environment isn't healthy for you." His phrasing was corporate, sanitized, and cold. "Then show me the documentation," I said quietly. The clatter of silverware stopped. Verena stepped in. "It's not about papers," she said softly. "It's about peace." I turned toward her. "Peace built on deceit doesn't last," I said. She looked away first. I left the table before he could respond. Behind me, their voices dropped to murmurs, the kind of whispers that feed off each other's guilt. But my heart didn't race anymore. The anger was still there, but sharper now, clean, no longer tangled in grief. I had spent too long fighting for their acknowledgement. That chapter was closed. By afternoon, the mail arrived. I was in the kitchen when I saw it, a plain envelope among the usual donor letters for the Lodge Foundation. My name typed neatly in the center. Inside was a single sheet, a printed letter accusing me of mental instability, neglect, episodes of depression. It read like a formal complaint. And on the back, scribbled in familiar handwriting, Celestine's. "My sister." Just 3 words, "for your file." I read it twice. Then I laughed, short and dry. I'd seen betrayal from spouses, from friends, but not from blood like this. She'd turned rumor into record. I folded it neatly, slid it into my pocket. My face trembled for a second, then steadied. If she wanted to build a case, I'd build mine better. Later, laughter drifted from the yard. I stepped out onto the porch, drawn by voices. The family had gathered for a photo shoot, everyone dressed in coordinated whites, like some picture-perfect catalog family. My granddaughter, Odette, was spinning in circles, giggling. She stopped when she saw me and tugged Verena's sleeve. "Is that Grandma or the mountain lady?" Verena chuckled lightly and said, "That's the stranger staying with us." The photographer laughed along. Odette's smile faded as she looked at me again. "Are you staying too long?" she asked, tilting her head. I knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe," I said softly. Her innocence wasn't her fault, but it hit harder than any insult could. A 5-year-old had absorbed their story. They'd rewritten me even in her eyes. I stood there as the camera clicked, the family laughing behind me. Inside my chest, something small and fragile snapped, but it didn't shatter. It sharpened. I went back to the guest house, the quiet welcoming me like an old ally. I opened my laptop and created a new document. Title: Reclamation Plan. Under it, I started typing names, contractors, attorneys, bank contacts, journalists. Every piece of evidence I'd collected. I didn't need to shout. I needed to act. I remembered a quote I'd once kept on a sticky note in my old office: "Nothing will work unless you do." Maya Angelou was right. So I worked. I drafted messages. I called Lysander, my lawyer. Denver. "Tomorrow morning," I said. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Understood." I stood on the loft balcony as the sun began to set behind the peaks. The air turned cold, slicing against my skin. The lodge glowed faintly through the dusk, warm light spilling from windows that used to be mine. They pushed me out of the frame, I whispered. "I'll redraw the picture myself." Then, my phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Lysander. A photo attached, the property deed, signed under Verena's company. Time-stamped 3 months ago. Proof. I looked at the screen until the image blurred, then exhaled. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel beaten. I felt awake. What they took wasn't gone, it was evidence. And now, it was my turn to strike. Quietly. Deliberately. The morning after the deed photo arrived, I didn't sleep in. I didn't linger. I moved with intention. The guest house became my war room. Lysander called at 9 sharp to confirm our spot at the Aspen Town Hall. Ellis followed up with a video file and a USB drive. We didn't whisper or tiptoe anymore, we were preparing for daylight. I sat at the long wooden table with stacks of papers, highlighters, tabs. The smell of pine from the windows mixed with printer ink and determination. I wasn't angry now. I wasn't sad either. I was focused. As I reviewed the slides we'd present, I remembered something I'd read years ago: there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. For too long, my silence had been their strategy. Today, I'd rewrite that. Not through confrontation, not through revenge, but through record. Public record. By late afternoon, the town hall buzzed with folding chairs and locals, a projector screen flickering at the front. I stood near the back as Ellis plugged in the drive. Verena sat 2 rows from the front with Gideon beside her. Ramona lingered by the wall, arms crossed. The room dimmed. The first clip rolled. Footage from 15 years ago, me, in jeans and gloves, helping pour the foundation slab. Another clip, me signing the permit documents, handing over the keys to our first local contractor. Then Ellis cut to the present, aerial drone footage showing the current state of Echo Lodge, and the digital deed listing Verena's name. Silence took hold. A few people shifted. Whispers started. I stepped to the front, microphone in hand. "This isn't about pride," I said. "It's about truth. About watching your life rewritten while you're still breathing." I held the mic steady. I didn't just build Echo Lodge. I designed it, funded it, gave it its name. And I'm here to claim what was mine before they erased me. Gasps. Eyes widened. Verena looked stunned, blinking fast, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. Gideon crossed his arms. He didn't look at me. I didn't need him to. Lysander took the stage. Calm, clean-cut, firm. He laid out 2 documents, one my original deed, signed, notarized, dated, and the second, a forged version filed months ago. He spoke in legal terms: fraudulent conveyance, civil damages, criminal implications under Colorado State Code. You could feel the air shift. Verena's face drained of color. Gideon finally looked up, jaw tight. The crowd turned quiet, then restless. The foundation of their lie had cracked in public. Lysander finished with one clear statement: ownership is not decided by presence. It's proven by law. I walked forward again. Verena. Gideon. I'm asking you to vacate Echo Lodge by week's end. The lodge will not be turned into your portfolio asset. It's returning to its origin. Verena opened her mouth, tried to speak. You can't just, this isn't. She looked toward Ramona, who looked away. The weight of evidence crushed every excuse she had rehearsed. Then, a small figure stood up from the aisle. Odette. My granddaughter. She walked to me, slipped her hand into mine. I bent slightly and looked her in the eyes. I'm not the stranger, I said to her. I'm the one who stayed. The one who remembers. She nodded slowly. Back at the lodge, a single light turned on in the west wing, the first room I ever decorated. No one said who turned it on. But it stayed lit through dusk, through dinner, through the quiet that followed. That night, I sat on the porch. Same chair. Different air. My phone buzzed. Channel 3 wants an interview. Aspen ×2. I smiled, not out of vanity, but out of relief. Let them come, I thought. Let them watch me rebuild. I closed my laptop and reached into my pocket. The handkerchief was still there. I unfolded it slowly. The embroidery, the tiny bird whose wing had been unfinished for years, now complete. The porch swing creaked like an old friend stretching its joints. I held my tea close to my chest. The air was crisp, not biting, but enough to remind me fall had arrived. Down in the valley, the light moved across the trees like a slow tide of amber and gold. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything that had passed, everything that had been stripped, fought for, and reclaimed. I thought back to the noise that once lived here. Shouting behind closed doors. I picked up a manila envelope. It was from the attorney handling the last of Verena's filings. The final word on her countersuit. I didn't need to open it. Not then. I slid it into my bag and walked out into the sun. Back at the lodge, I stood in the center of the great room. This place didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like something waiting to bloom. I opened my laptop and typed out the opening draft. Echo Lodge will now be a creative retreat for women over 50. A space for women to regroup, write, rest, rebuild. To feel seen again. Lysander had said something a few days ago that stuck. When you hold space for others, healing echoes louder. I picked up a piece of chalk and wrote on the lodge's old slate wall, "Begin again," in full color. That afternoon, Odette helped me plant chrysanthemums by the front steps. Bright yellow, deep burgundy. I told her why those flowers mattered, how they meant endurance, rebirth. They'll come back next year too? She asked. Every year, I said. Even if it snows on them first. Toward the end of the week, just after lunch, Gideon showed up. No call, no warning. I knew he'd come eventually. He stood by the railing on the porch, hat in hand. Looked older than he did just weeks ago. I didn't offer him coffee. I didn't invite him in. I won't take up much of your time, he said. I just needed to say I'm sorry. For everything. No excuses. I don't have any left. I studied him. He didn't look like a man trying to fix anything. Just one trying to finally look at the damage. You didn't just lie to me, I said quietly. You forgot who I was. He looked down. You're right. I nodded toward the steps. You should go. Odette's coming back from her art class soon. I want her to remember today as quiet. He left without another word. I didn't watch him walk away. I kept my eyes on the mountain. That night, I lit the fireplace. The logs crackled, warm and steady. I pulled a fresh notebook from the shelf, settled in with a blanket, and opened to the first page. I wrote, "This isn't where it ends. This is where I begin." Then came a knock at the door. Not urgent. Not hesitant either. Just perfectly timed.